Hey, welcome to Janktown. Will here, and today we're covering one of the iconic characters in Eldraine, the twin brother of Rowan and my namesake, Will, Scion of Peace. He's a 3-mana value 2/4 Azorius human wizard with vigilance, and he has an activated ability where if we tap him, spells we cast this turn that are white and or blue cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life we've gained this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. So we'll be breaking down Will and his playstyle, the commander of course, not me. Go over the deck's main themes, and we'll end with a walkthrough of our deck's card choices. Now some of these might get pretty pricey, but don't worry, I got you. I will also be offering up some budget-friendly alternatives that we can run. So if that sounds good, hit the like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you, and let's get into it. So Will at 3-mana value can come down pretty early, but depending on our opening hand, we might not always want to run him out immediately. Will needs Lifegain, and so we'd preferably set up our ramped or our Lifegain engines first. Much like his sister though, Will's role is to be an enabler in this deck. He's not a build around, he's not a finisher, he just sort of makes our deck run way better. He's like the grease in the machine, yeah. Oh, by the way, if you want to check out our Rowan primer, we did do a video on her earlier. You could click, I think here. I'm not sure. The good thing though is because of the nature of Azorius, we're unlikely to be able to just burn the table out of nowhere, unlike, let's say, we could with a Rowan. So while that may sound like a downside, for me, I think that means he's got a lower heat index, which means players are unlikely to kill him on sight. That means he'll be able to survive a turn cycle, and we'll get to untap with him. Lifegain is obviously a big part of our strategy, and typically there are 2 ways to go about this. One is through multiple instances of Lifegain, like Soul Sister style. The other is through burst Lifegain, like a big attacker with a lifelink or something like this. Honestly, Will doesn't care too much, because he cares more about the totals, but it's usually easier to generate bigger chunks of Lifegain rather than like cobbling together multiple instances. Regardless whether it's incremental or burst though, we want these sources of Lifegain to be consistent. And since Will can only tap as a sorcery, we don't need to be too tricky with it. You know, consistency is where we put the premium here, not the ability to do it by surprise. Lastly, because Will is best suited as an enabler, our deck shouldn't fall apart if he somehow gets hated out. I know he's a big mana discounter, but as tempting as it may sound, we don't want to backload our spells, right? We'd still want our spells falling comfortably around the curve. That way, we can still have some flexibility if things don't go our way, or we can pop off when the stars align. The deck's 7 different themes consist of our usuals of ramp, removal, and draw, but I'll first walk us through card choices around our deck's other themes of Lifegain, the Peace Core, Protection, and something we like to call UBP or Utilities, Bombs, and Pets. With Lifegain, we want some consistency, so we're bringing a bunch of lifelink creatures. Serra Ascendant, people say he's fallen off, but at 1 mana, a 6/6 flying lifelinker still sounds good to me, especially if you can squeeze something out of the Lifegain advantage. Steel Seraph has Prototype, meaning it can come down at 3 or 6 mana value, and Brightling is a 3 mana value 3/3 that can give itself lifelink, and it's also pretty hard to get rid of because it just bounces itself back to hand. Gisela is a 4 mana value 4/3 angel with flying, first strike, and lifelink, and the Brisella back part of her isn't really too key to what we're trying to do, so we actually aren't running Bruna. Now, if that sounds blasphemous to you, you can always make space, free up a slot to run her, but I already thought it was pretty difficult to make space in the deck. There are a lot of good cards getting cut, and I'll walk through some of them as well, so just be conscious of that. Another thing though is that I'm aware that both the Ascendant and Gisela are pretty pricey. So if you don't want to shell out that budget, you can replace them with a Baneslayer Angel and Healer's Flock. They're still evasive, which is great. And the thing is why I chose these cards is because I like that they're costed at 4 and below, right? The first 3 turns is usually around the time when people are setting up. So it's a good time for us to also get our game plan started. Spirit Loop is an aura that kind of looks like Lifelink, but it's not. And if you guys don't know, if you have multiple instances of Lifelink, they don't stack. It's redundant, right? You gain the life only once, but with the way Spirit Loop is worded, it's a triggered ability. That means it goes on the stack after damage is dealt. So what's the difference? Why does that matter? Well, with Lifelink, life gain happens as damage happens. So you deal 3, you gain 3, happens at the same time. With Spirit Loop, you have to check first that the damage was dealt. So in that same scenario, you deal 3, you gain 3, then Spirit Loop triggers, you can gain 3 more. So it's kind of like double strike, double gain, something along those lines. It also has the Rancor clause so that when the aura falls off, you don't lose it forever. It just goes back to your hand. Splendor Mare is a creature though that does give lifelink. And remember, since it doesn't stack, don't put the lifelink counter on a creature that already has lifelink. I do like this though in the early game. It's a good 3/3 for 3. But in the later stages, we can cycle it away if it's something we don't need. Aside from lifelink though, Blind Obedience and Syndic of Thighs are a pair of low-costed extort cards, which means we can usually gain 3 life if we sink an extra white whenever we play a spell. I do bring one Soul Sister, in this case Soul Warden, but yeah, it doesn't matter which one you bring. Could be the Warden, could be the Attendant, both good. It's good for incidental life gain even on our opponent's turns, and you'll see that that'll matter later when we go into our other cards. Sun Droplet is also another steady source of life gain. It triggers on each player's upkeep, and people love to hit life gain decks in the face. Yeah, it's because we can take it, right? In Sun Droplet, it's just that steady, consistent source of life gain. Last on this list is Shabraz the Sky Shark. Will is a human, so incidentally, he can ride the shark. But more importantly, it turns our card draw into life gain. At the bare minimum, we'll at least gain 1 life on our draw step. But you know, it could be more than that. Alright, so we're gaining life, hopefully with some consistency. The Peace Corps are the volunteers supporting Will in his fight for Eldraine. Crested Sunmare and Regna trigger on each end step, and they make bodies if we gained any life that turn. This is why having a Soul Sister or a Sun Droplet is good, and with Will's discount, hopefully we can get these guys down a turn earlier than they should be. The Book of Exalted Deeds and Griffin Airy are a pair of non-creature permanents that have a life gain threshold of 3, but they trigger only on our end step. So if you have a life linker, it should be fairly easy to achieve these goals. Gwahir and Valkyrie Harbinger are cards that make creatures on every end step, provided we can reach a certain life gain goal as well. Now this for me achieves either of 2 things. Either players attack us, we get a chance to block with our life linkers, which is great, we might be able to get a token out that way, or people don't go at us and they leave us alone and it's kinda becoming like a propaganda ghostly prison type of effect. Either way, both sound pretty good. I did leave out Resplendent Angel though, which also makes angels at every end step, cause other than costing like $30 to $50, crazy, I think that gaining 5 is actually significantly harder to get to. I mean, I think gaining 3, pretty doable. 4, it's not as consistent anymore. And so 5 is just like a little bit harder, you know? You'd probably need to already attack with 2 creatures by that point. Or you have some of those gain +1 life effects. You know, gain +1 whenever you gain life, something like that. Those types of effects, which we're not running, by the way. I also skipped on Angelic Accord. It is a good card, but I value the bodies on Gwahir and the Harbinger more, so good cards getting cut. All I've mentioned so far though are stuff that accrue us value over the game. But Will can be a big time mana discounter, and so I've included some big time X spells that can create just these board winning, game winning states out of nowhere. Invasion of New Phyrexia makes a bunch of knights, and it can later flip into an anthem with Teferi. Finale of Glory can make a bunch of soldiers and angels depending on how much X we pay. And Starnheim Unleashed is a card we'd always likely want to foretell away first, so that we have the chance to be able to get a bunch of angels, particularly when we have the discount. Just being mindful of the curve though, we don't always have to go all out. Like to get our X to 10 every time, depending on the situation, you know, we might need to fire these off a lot earlier than we'd want. And so at least there's that versatility available to us. A finisher that we likely can't pull off though without Will is Storm Herd. Yes! Any excuse to play this card. It's totally jank, but when it works, it's super glorious. We're reliant on our board to close out the game, so protecting it is important. Flawless Maneuver, Grand Crescendo, and your Temples and Attack all give our board indestructible, and in my opinion, these are the 3 best versions of these types of effects. The final boss version though is the Fairies Protection, and really nothing comes close to it. It's an absolute format staple, and it's played from casual all the way to CEDH. The only type of deck that really can't run Teferi's Protection are budget decks. And I get it. So a more budget version is Clever Concealment. It also phases out a bunch of our creatures, letting it dodge exile-based wraths. But if that's still too pricey, then Rootborn Defenses. We get a token, and we get to make our board indestructible. Celestine the Living Saint is a 3/4 life linker, which gives us some recursion. So even if Will dies, she can actually bring him back herself because she has lifelink and she has 3 power. Finally, there's Pippin of the Citadel. He protects against targeted removal like a Mother of Ruins, but he also has the flexibility to make a creature unblockable just in case we need to get something through. UBP time! Alright, so we're going wide, which means the new Crater Hoof, aka Moonshaker Cavalry, deserves a spot in this deck. There are other go-wide finishers though, like the now classic Akroma's Will. But again, since this has shot up in price, you can run Bond of Discipline. So it's not as good because it doesn't have that whole double strike part, but at least it makes your attack unblockable by tapping down our opponent's boards. There's also True Conviction, which might sound like a strange pick considering we're already running a bunch of lifelink creatures. But remember, the tokens we make aren't, they're just vanilla. So the life are with flying. So the lifelink is actually pretty relevant, and the double strike is a way to just close out games faster. Now, since we're running a lot of tokens, we do run some token support. Mystic Reflection is a way to make a bunch of incoming 1/1s all into like Crested Sunmares or something. On the flip side, we can also use it defensively, turning our opponent's best creature or some insane ETB value creature into a non-threatening one. We also run Mondrak, which doubles the creatures coming in, as well as Jin-Gitaxias, who doubles our artifacts, instants, and sorceries. That means we can now get a double Finale of Glory, or a double Storm Herd. Yes. These are both a bit pricey, I get that. So budget versions, like for Mondrak, we could run Clone Legion. Means our tokens need to come into play first, and then we'll double our board. And then for Jin, we can run something like Tazim Royal Mage. What is that card? Well, if we're using Will's ability, we can completely discount the kicker cost. So this way we can Finale of Glory, pay 1 blue to play Tazim, get the Finale of Glory back to our hand, then play it again. So it's like a sort of manual transmission type of way to double. If we did have to pop some of our big spells early just to survive, maybe get a respectable board state, maybe it's getting a bit aggro, Devout Invocation is a way to get that big effect after the fact. We can tap our random knights or a bunch of our 1/1s or whatever and get to use them as a way to bring out a bunch of 4/4 angels into play. With Will's discount, this can also be played for as low as 1 white pit. Finally, Teferi, who slows the sunset. He's a versatile 4-drop walker that can ramp us, get double discounts from Will if we untap him, or if we're short on cards, he can net us one of the top 3 cards of our library. Now, a few cards I didn't include in the deck but I thought was worth mentioning is Approach of the Second Sun. It's a powerful effect, can absolutely win you the game, potentially on the same turn, especially if you have a draw X spell or something along those lines. But I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it in this build. I feel like it's a really powerful win con, of course, especially in more dirtly decks. But here we're trying to be proactive, aggressive, and so I just really wanted to embrace that spirit. But if you haven't played it yet or you haven't won with it yet, I would suggest you try it out at least once. The other one is Alhamret's Archive. So I kind of go back and forth on this card. It is a 5-drop, so it's kind of like, it's got a bit of that Panharmonicon in it, in that you play it and it might do nothing. But at the same time, it's really good. Like, I get it. It doubles the life gain, it doubles the discount, doubles our card draw. Maybe we could replace Jin-Gitaxias with this. I don't know. But I kind of value Jin's ability because he can mitigate wipes. Because you could have like a wipe in hand, but to have that extra instant or sorcery to just throw at Jin's ability and then still have mana left over to play a wipe, it's a lot harder than you think. But I don't know, you know what, maybe it depends on your meta. Because we're committing to the board, we're usually playing most of what's in our hand. So draw ensures we have the fuel to keep it going. Secret Rendezvous and Ingenious Mastery are a pair of 3-drops that draw 3, some of the best rates in the game, albeit with some drawbacks. The Mastery actually has the flexibility to draw a whole bunch if we get a big discount with Will and use that to pay the X. Lauren and Quain are like Phyrexian Arena style cards that can net us a card per turn cycle. And giving cards to our opponents is usually pretty bad, but hopefully we can use it as some type of like bargaining chip for them to not blow up our stuff while we're still setting up. Some more serious card draw effects though are Drogskull Reaver, which is a flying double striking lifelinker and draws us a card whenever we gain a life. Another one is Well of Lost Dreams. It's a staple of Lifegain decks, and that's because of just how many cards it can draw. Maximizing Will's discounts, we also run a trio of X spells in Finale of Revelation, Pull from Tomorrow, and Silver Scrutiny. The Finale, if we get to 10, pretty ridiculous. But even the other two I think are pretty good if you can get them with any type of discount. Even if it's just like -3 from one lifelink attack or something, it's pretty good. Again, I like how these slot into the curve just so that we have that flexibility and we can play them at different points in the game. Now, I did avoid Sphinx's Rev. I know that's probably the card that people first think of when they decide that they're gonna build Will, but it's 3 mana that you just can't avoid paying, right? It'll always cost you white, blue, blue, and by the time you use it, you've probably already tapped Will, just so you can get the X discount. So at that point, the extra life gain might not have so much of a payoff. Blue and white are known for control, so our removal suite is actually pretty good. Swords is a classic, and with Will, we can even Swords our own creature if, it's desperate times. Stroke of Midnight is a new card from Wilds of Eldraine, and it's kind of like Generous Gift, but it refunds a 1/1 instead of a 3/3. The difference is, you just can't hit lands. We also run some configurable wipes in Austere Command, the Battle of Bywater, and a new one, Expel the Interlopers. Because even if we want to go wide, we might still be outgunned, outmanned, outnumbered, outplanned. And so these are just ways to reset without hopefully sending us back to the Stone Age. Some big discount payoffs are some X-based removals, like Curse of the Swine, which exiles X creatures, turns them into 2/2s, Keel's Intervention, which blows up X artifacts and enchantments, or, if we need it, gains us a bunch of life. Finally, Blue Sun's Twilight. We can steal our opponent's best creature, probably even get a copy of it. Last on the list is Capsize. Now, without stack interaction, this can take over games. And if we gain 4, this is essentially like a repeatable pay-to bounce any permanent back to hand. Really powerful, especially when games come down to 1v1. For ramp, it sounds a bit boring, but we still have a bit of tech. Obviously, there's gonna be Soul Ring, Signet, Talisman, and Bauble. I actually don't bring the Signet. It forces you to pay 1 to be able to get both a blue and a white, and sometimes in this deck, you kinda want the double blue or the double white. Pristine Talisman is a 3-drop rock, and while it's colorless, it does gain us a life, which can be useful, especially with Sunmare or Regna. Knight of the White Orchid is catch-up ramp, and Restoration of Eiganjo can also be a great ramp spell, especially if we discard a land in the second chapter. Last couple of cards, a new one from the set, Throne of Eldraine. It's a souped-up Gilded Lotus, and odds are we're picking white. And I also put in Thieving Skydiver. It's a 2-drop that can steal a Soul Ring or a Mana Rock, or in the later stages of the game, especially once we have Will's discount, it could get us something much juicier. Now, that's just me going off the beaten path. I think white is already the best ramp color after green, and so if you have the budget for it, I don't see how you could go wrong running cards like Smothering Tithe and Land Tax, both of which are getting some reprints in Wilds of Eldraine. And so that's the deck. I hope you guys found this video useful. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe because it really helps us out. I put up a question too on the community page of the channel asking what do you guys think we should do next. And so if you could check that out and give some feedback, that would be really great. Until next time though, stay inspired friends, and I'll see you soon.